back with another episode of Local Roots. Hi, I'm Todd Studer. On today's show, we begin Law Enforcement Week as I had an opportunity to go to the Masonic Lodge in Council Bluffs. I told you that that was coming up. They had a lunch yesterday for law enforcement and set a record for how many meals they put out, well over 300. And so law enforcement stopped by, got burgers, got brats and chips and drinks and ice cream bars. I actually had 2 ice cream bars yesterday. Yeah, I'm going to have to take a few extra steps, I think, to walk that off. But a huge thank you to the Masons for what they did with that, and also for setting up all the interviews. I mean, that was just wonderful. In today's interview, we are going to be visiting with Ryan DeVault. He is the information officer with the Iowa State Patrol over our region of Southwest Iowa. Covers 9 counties. So you come up 3 counties from Missouri and over 3 counties from Nebraska. And that is his region. And we get to talk to him about, well, we're going to talk to him about that new hands-free law. Yeah, you're going to want to pay attention to this because things are different now. And you can get in a lot of trouble if they catch your phone in your hand while you're driving, which I think is long overdue. So I'm tired of sitting at stoplights waiting for people to go because they're looking at their phone. So Ryan DeVault is coming up on today's show. Castle & Associates of American Family Insurance is your local insurance provider for all your home, auto, life, business, and farm insurance needs. 4 convenient locations in Council Bluffs, Trainer, Bellevue, and Elkhorn. They are local and in your neighborhood, ready to help you navigate the complexities of insurance today. Travis and his team educate, advise, and simplify insurance, all to protect those things you cherish most. Give them a call today for your free quote. Do you or does someone you love need in-home care? Home Care Advocacy Network helps you maintain your own privacy in your own space while still receiving care and support with a personalized touch. Aging in place can be critical for many people. Home Care Advocacy Network can meet those needs with an understanding that assisted living is best at home. HCAN of Southwest Iowa brings the personal touch to care at home in Council Bluffs, Glenwood, Red Oak, Clarinda, and all the surrounding communities. Visit hcan.com/Southwest Iowa to learn more. This is Ryan DeVault. He's the information officer with the Iowa State Patrol, all part of Law Enforcement Memorial Week, really, I think that you would say. I know that you've already been involved with some memorials. Did you say over in Des Moines?
We had one on Friday is when we do our big, it's a conglomeration of the city, state, and county entities that kind of come together there at the Police Officer Memorial, which is located kind of between our Orr and Pape Public Safety Headquarters building and the State Capitol Complex. There's a nice memorial there with, a tribute in the names of those, that we've lost on there.
How large of an event is it? How big is the turnout for something like that?
It's quite the event. I was unable to make it on Friday, but it brings in quite a few people and officers from around the state that, that can make it to that memorial.
Well, tell me a little bit about the information officer. What do those duties entail?
So, yeah, every district in the state, every state patrol district has a public information officer. So our jobs kind of entail, we still do work the road some, just like every other normal state trooper does. But then some of my job duties, school programs that schools might request, any media outreach that there happens to be kind of in our area here in Southwest Iowa, I guess it is, for District 3 that I cover, the 9 counties in Southwest Iowa. Okay. We'll do radio interviews if there's any news interviews that need to be done. I'm the point of contact, I guess, for those media folks if they have questions on an accident report or something like that. So, and then some of the other job duties, obviously during the state fair, we have a state patrol booth at the fair that we man for the 2 weeks of the fair, and there's about 15 of us that split up, cover 2 or 3 days of that booth, just talking to people that come to the state fair. And then obviously another big one we have is RAGBRAI, the big bike ride across Iowa, which actually came through our Southwest Iowa area last year. Yeah. Now it's Northwest, but then all of us, so there's 13 of us that are public information officers stationed in different areas throughout the state, are assigned for RAGBRAI for the week, and we help get that ride safely across Iowa. We'll do traffic control at the intersections. Yep. And then we've got a separate team that kind of pushes the bicyclists along. We call them our push team. Because when RAGBRAI plans that, They know they need to have the bulk of the riders out of this town, advancing to the next town in a certain time frame to get them to their end destination by 6 o'clock at night. Right. So it can be a handful at times. It's long days, hot days out there on the pavement, but it's enjoyable and it's something different. So we have a lot of different job duties as public resource officers. So.
I've never ridden RAGBRAI, but I have worked overnight towns.
Gotcha.
And so I know that there's kind of three groups. You've got the ones that are going to get up early and just race to the next town.
Correct.
You've got the ones that are going to make sure that they enjoy it the entire way and eating the pie in every little town and along the way, and it's very social. And then you got the partiers that have been up half the night, right, drinking beer, don't even get out of their tent till about 11 o'clock that morning. Right. And how do you get them moving and get them where they need to be? Because you want everybody where they're at before that sun goes down.
Correct. Yeah. I mean, we tell them on RAGBRAI, the State Patrol and the ambulance crews as well, they service 6 o'clock in the morning to 6 o'clock at night. Anytime before that, if you want to get up and leave early, you're on your own. Obviously we're going to assist. There'll be another ambulance call, but as far as the people assigned to RAGBRAI and helping you at the intersections, we get it on intersections at 6 o'clock and we're done at 6 o'clock. So anytime before or after that, you're on your own as far as intersections go. But yeah, it can be challenging. You hit it right on the head. You've got the ones that want to take it in, the ones that you'd think it was the big bicycle race that's winner gets something for it. And then yes, the ones that I guess like to enjoy and partake in stopping at every beverage shop they can. Those are typically the ones that our push people deal with, right, because they drag their feet and they want to sit and have a good time. Many of them, though, by the tail end of the week, some of them they're not even necessarily riding the whole day. They're getting a ride because they realize I'm only halfway, right, and I've got a long ways to go. So they'll just get a ride with some of their support vehicles, which is fine. But yeah, the diehards that do the partying, like you talked about, I don't know how they do it, honestly, for a week straight, right, because in the sun and obviously those are some issues that the ambulance crew that is contracted with RAGBRAI deal with is, those people that maybe don't drink enough water, along with their alcohol, and then by the middle of the week, that's catching up with them because they're just so dehydrated. So.
There's a lot of safety issues involved with that too. That I remember back in the day that, because they always look at the county roads, they want to stay off the state highways. Mm-hmm. The county roads typically aren't in as good a shape, and even in the area that I grew up in, Northwest Iowa, I remember a road going into a town that had those vertical cracks that went down the center of the road.
Right.
Once upon a time, tires used to be about that wide.
I think there's still a lot of them that are.
They'd go into those cracks pretty easily, and that's when lock over the top and people would get hurt. Because there is some safety issues.
Yeah, and the counties do a good job if they know it's coming on that road. I mean, obviously, money's not endless, but they will make the improvements maybe that the RAGBRAI pre-route people recommend. Like, hey, that's a pretty big crack there. Railroad tracks are always an issue with bikes. Oh, yeah. We had some here a while back that it was raining, and then there was kind of some of that rubber coating stuff all around the railroad tracks, and as soon as their tires were hitting them, they were just wiping out. Oh, and we were trying to warn them. We were prior to the railroad track, and we're telling them, hey, you might want to get off your bike and walk. Well, most of them were like, I'll be good. I've done this 100 times, and they were wiping out. I mean, literally an ambulance sat there just to tend to wounds that people had because of that.
Well, we could probably just do a whole show on nothing but RAGBRAI and safety and what folks should be able to do about that. But wanted to talk to you some more about just being in the State Patrol. Mm-hmm. Obviously, there's different areas of law enforcement. Why State Patrol? Why go that direction?
Honestly, for me, it was just, I had people that I knew that were, like you said, city, county, state. One of the local troopers I rode with back when I was in high school. It was just kind of one of those, you weren't doing the same thing every day. You were out covering a broader area, than maybe say the city. I kind of describe that to people and we all work together. There's no bad mouthing in between. We joke and have fun with each other. But, city officers are kind of confined here. Then the county, you get a little bit more. And the state, like for instance, me, technically statewide, I can enforce those laws. But we coverage here in the Council Bluffs District 3 area, we cover the 9 counties in southwest Iowa. So 3 up from the Missouri border and 3 across from the Nebraska border is our District 3 area. So it was just something that interested me, having that broader area to be able to travel and not maybe being in the same little area, every single day. So,
Well, you mentioned enforcing laws. There's a new one that just recently was signed by the governor and passed by the legislature, that it's hands-free, which I guess that from a layman's point of view, I guess I always thought it was illegal to drive holding your phone next to your head.
And it's funny that a lot of people think that.
Yeah.
But currently, right now, it's an electronic device law that makes it pretty hard for us to enforce, because you can still have that phone in your hand, number one, whether they're talking on it, but then also with GPS navigation, if I see somebody driving down the road that I know is probably texting currently the way the law is written, all they have to do is say, well, I was just using my GPS if I were to stop them and address that situation. Right. So it's one of those that it's a true, and that's the way we wanted it. State Patrol's been working, trying to push legislation through for, I think 4 years, if I remember correctly, maybe even pushing 5, to try to get this law passed, because there's no doubt some of our neighboring states, Illinois and Minnesota, when they passed it, they saw the following year after passing the hands-free bill, they saw a decrease in crashes by anywhere between 20 and 30%. So that's huge. We think it's a bill that we have no doubt will save lives. Again, it's only as good as any other law. I give the example of the seatbelt law, right? So the seatbelt law has been in effect since the early 80s. Last year, our fatalities on Iowa roadways, we still had 44% of those people were not buckled in. So it's great that it is law, but we need help from the public, from everybody, when it comes to this hands-free law, to take it to heart and truly understand kind of the dangers of having those devices in your hand. Maybe it doesn't even necessarily have to be a cell phone, but I always give people the example. They say that it takes the average person 5 seconds to read or respond to a text message. In that length of time, in that 5 seconds at 55 miles per hour, you've covered the length of a football field. So I ask people, I'm like, how many things can go wrong in the length of a football field? Let's say here in Council Bluffs on a city street, how many driveways are there? How many sidewalks are there? Crosswalks are there? A lot of bad things can happen. So it's definitely one of those laws we are in huge support of, and we are very, very happy, as an organization. I think everybody in law enforcement, because it doesn't take being in law enforcement to drive down the road and realize how many people have a phone in their hand.
Oh, my.
Whether it's talking, looking at it, texting, I mean, their eyes are nowhere near you as you're approaching them. So it's a law to me that it kind of, I don't understand why it took so long to pass, because I think it's a law that, okay, if I don't wear my seatbelt, I'm the only one that's going to get killed in that crash, right? Right. But you could still injure somebody else by your actions with a phone in your hand.
I heard it described a number of years ago that if you are driving and you're looking at your phone for any reason, while you're doing that, your car does not have a driver.
Correct.
Because you're not in control of the car.
Right.
The car is in control of itself.
Correct.
And that's how many times I've lost count that I've stopped at a stoplight, 2 lanes go in the same direction.
Right.
And the light turns green and nobody moves.
Nobody goes. You know what they're doing, right?
They're all looking at their phones instead of looking at the light.
Right.
And it's, what is so important that can't be answered? Well, I do know it's because it's addictive.
It is.
It's that little tiny dopamine hit that you get if somebody hits the like button on your Facebook post or any of those things, and you get addicted to that, and to let that go while you're in the car, I think we can get there. Just like, look, I'm a child of the 80s. I remember riding around in the back of a Ford Pinto station wagon,
standing up, and laying down, doing whatever.
And it didn't matter.
Right.
And then when the seatbelt law came along, it's like, oh man, this is just uncomfortable. I don't, just because I wasn't used to it. Now, I don't know that I could physically move a car without having my seatbelt on, because I'm so used to it being there, and it just doesn't feel right. Eventually, I would assume that's the goal with this hands-free law.
And I think so, and that's kind of the thing, with the hands-free law, starting July 1 is when it will take effect. But from July 1 till the end of 2025, law enforcement will just be required to write warnings to people for that. I tell people, use that 6 months. Let's not even use all 6 months, but let's use a couple months to make yourself and train yourself, like you said about a seatbelt. Let's do that with our phones. Go out in advance and purchase the things you need. Some of the things we always heard was, oh gosh, now my phone's not compatible, or I'm sorry, my vehicle's not compatible to be able to use Bluetooth. Well, you still have a speakerphone, right? So get yourself a holder, put that phone in there to where if somebody calls, because you are allowed under the new law that will take effect in July it's called a one touch, right? So if you have a phone call coming in, you can hit answer on it,
right?
But then that phone can't be in your hand. It's literally a one touch. It's not multiple touches in, typing in a phone number. So I tell people, get that holder in advance so that you're starting to develop those good habits. Sure, it might cost you some money, but I also compare it to if a windshield wiper breaks on your car, what do you go do? You spend the money to go fix it because it's a safety issue.
Yeah, those holders aren't that expensive anymore.
They aren't. They're not. And there's all kinds out there. I understand sometimes you can't hear a speakerphone well enough going down the road, but I agree. There's so many out there anymore that you can get an auxiliary cable that plugs into your phone, if you have an auxiliary on your phone or in your vehicle. You can get a holder and just use the speakerphone. You can buy a Bluetooth headset. There's a lot of options that are out there. It's just we truly want people to get things out of their hands. And, I teach a lot of driver's ed. I tell young kids, but I also would tell adults the same thing. I don't think we all probably take for granted a little bit that we make it from point A to point B in a vehicle every single day and don't have any issues for the most part.
Yeah.
But I tell people probably the most single way any of us would die on any given day is probably a car wreck. Whether you drive 10 miles to work or you drive 100 miles to work, that's probably the most dangerous thing, depending on your job and your occupation, that you're probably going to do. And I don't know that everybody kind of grasps that. I don't know.
I drive a heavy car. I have my car weighs about 4,000 pounds. So if you think about it, we're traveling on a state highway, a 2-lane state highway, and somebody's coming at me. If everybody's doing the speed limit, as we pass each other, that's 110 miles an hour, separated by about 2 feet.
Right.
That's where we are at. That we just, I'm fine with that, but there's a lot of danger there. And if I'm looking at this.
Right.
It's
and like you said, I think, we all have that addiction a little bit to these, right? I mean, we're just so used to it. It's like I said, I'd forget my wallet before I'd forget my phone when I leave the house, which is, and now I go and think of, okay, my kids are in their early 20s now. Mm-hmm. My kids had phones in their hands probably 10 years old, so they're 10 or 12 years. Now, today's generation of 10-year-olds might have had it when they were 5. And so not only are they used to it, I think they can use it and multitask and drive and, I can send this quick text out. And so we do some different educational driving golf carts with, narrow cones out in some open fields just to show, and then we'll text kids while they're doing that and try to have them text us.
So
we do that as a training and an
them.
educational. Yeah. We're trying to make them understand, it's not easy. You will still hit cones. Even if some of them don't hit cones, by the time, we're responding back to their text and we're literally sitting in the golf cart next to them and we will text them back. And we're almost at a creeping crawl through these cones because they're going so slow. They don't want to hit the cones and they know that. Yeah. And I said, now if you're on a road, do you think you can go this slow and A, not get into an accident and B, not have somebody call and be like, hey, something's going on with this person? So, I think there's going to be a lot of education to do on it. Kind of some key points on the hands-free law. It basically prohibits any use of an electronic device unless it's in hands-free mode, other than to have a one-touch to answer. So it needs to be voice-activated. I think the bill also adds in there that you cannot view or watch any type of a laptop, any movies, FaceTime, video calls. Those are all kind of off limits, and there's no manipulating of a device. You can still use your device for GPS to get you from point A to point B, but those coordinates and those locations have to be entered before you start moving the vehicle. Once you're in between, it's hands off again. So
that makes sense because I use mine for GPS all the time, and I have something that's actually it's one of those suction cups that mounts to the windshield, and then it locks in there. Mm-hmm. I use it even if I know where I'm going.
Right.
because I'm just OCD about time.
Yep.
So I always know that
Right.
I will be where I'm going because I can see, okay, I'm going to get
Arrival
here then.
time.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I use it for, not
Yep.
necessarily the direction.
Yep.
So yeah, it's good to have that information and know that you're going to be transitioning people
Yes.
off of these things and be able to do that. I wanted to talk to you also today about staffing. I mean, where are you guys at with the state patrol? I mean, is it in a perpetual state of recruitment?
It is, and I think everybody in law enforcement, talking to cities, counties, I think everybody's kind of hurting, I guess you could say. So we're continually doing a recruitment process. We just got done maybe a month ago with a current class. It was certified officers, so they were previous, they'd been previous city officers or county officers somewhere. So we do a shortened academy for those folks. We just pushed, I think we ended up with, was there 8 of them? I think that made it through. So that's not a lot considering 27 years ago when I went through, we were running 40 people in an academy in a year, so.
Is there just one academy in the state or are there multiple?
So Department of Public Safety has we have our own 20-week basic academy. So whether you're a state fire marshal, DCI, Iowa State Patrol, anybody in the Department of Public Safety, Intel, narcotics enforcement, we have our own drill instructors that's run a lot like a boot camp. But then your city and state officers, your city and county officers or any other law enforcement in the state, they go through the Iowa Law Enforcement Academy. Both of them are held at Camp Dodge, which is the military base in Johnston, Iowa. You're there Monday through Friday. Again, it's a lot like a Marine boot camp, but then you do get to go home on the weekends. And I describe to kids, it's a lot like school though. Like you have, a morning physical fitness running that you do, going to the gym in essence. Then you do a inspection where they're inspecting all your gear, just like you see in a boot camp, where you're online at attention. But most of the day consists of sitting in a classroom with instructors teaching on multitude of different topics over those 20 weeks to teach these people what we need them to know, what they need to do, to be in law enforcement.
Right. It sounds similar to, you mentioned Marine boot camp. I went through the Navy at basic training, and the hardest part for me of that was staying awake in class.
Right.
It was difficult because obviously everybody's sleep deprived. And sitting there in a classroom situation, I'm guessing it's probably the same with what you're talking about, that there's so many other things that go into it. Now, even though you're tired, you have to stay concentrating. So that was actual training. I believe it wasn't just what they were teaching us. The physical part of sitting there was part of it. So same thing, I would think.
And we tell people if you're struggling to stay awake, you're welcome to stand up, as well. And it's just, teaching that independence, but also responsibility that goes along with that. In our hiring process, we do that. We're basically running 2 academies a year. So we'll do one 20-week academy, and then here in, I think it's a couple weeks, our process opens back up again so people can submit their applications. It's about a 10-step process to get hired, as a trooper. When I came on, we were hired many different people in my academy. A good bulk of them were going to be a trooper wearing this uniform, but then there were some that went straight to narcotics, some that went straight to the DCI. Now, almost all of our people come through the state patrol, and then you can put in for a transfer to go to the fire marshal's office or the narcotics office or Department of Criminal Investigation. So it's just kind of a funnel to get experience. A lot of it is, right? We're bringing on a pretty good number of young people. I was 20 years old when I got hired myself, and we have positions for 18-year-olds, which is kind of a unique thing with law enforcement. We have a candidate recruit that work at the state capitol. You can get hired as those, we call them blue coats, at the age of 18, and then transition into what we call post-16, which are also hired at the age of 18. So 18 to 22-year-olds we will hire. you'll have to work at the Capitol complex and around the state office buildings, which is what I did for 2 years, because you have to be 22 years old to be a road trooper, we call it, or a trooper. It's Trooper 2.
Going in when you're 20, how far into your career were you when you knew this is what I want to do? Because when you're 20 years old, you can't know that ultimately this is where I want to spend my career. How long did it take before you realized this is it for me?
It obviously, when you're at the Capitol, like I was from age 20 to 22, you're young, right? You're green. I look back at my time, some people look at that as time like, oh, you're just kind of because in essence it's kind of a security guard position, right? You're not out actively doing enforcement like a road trooper does. You're basically making sure doors are locked on the Capitol complex, and sometimes that gets a little challenging because you're young, you're motivated, you want to go out and be a cop, right? You're ready to charge, and now all of a sudden they're kind of like reel the reins in a little bit. But I also look at that as a time to grow, get life experiences. When you're only 20 years old, whether, I went to a junior college for 2 years. We've had a handful we've hired straight out of high school, that they just need some time and some life experiences, and that's kind of a good place to start. So I would never discourage anybody from starting there. But, it was probably a couple years after being out here on the road. So, probably by age 24, I knew this was the right career path, the right move, even though I kind of knew that before. I tell young kids now too, don't think you have to get a degree in law enforcement or criminal justice to be a trooper, right? In fact, I even encourage some young kids. I'm like, maybe think about, fine if you want to go down that direction, but maybe a minor in business, because maybe you get into this job and then decide it's not for me, it's not what I wanted, and it's good to have that business degree to bounce back on. So
I was going to ask about, are there those type of stats
There are.
that how many actually decide to make it a career versus how many just spend a certain amount of time?
There
doing
probably
something else?
are, and we have a few. I still say that by the time you've committed to, let's just call it a 20-week boot camp, right? For our academy, I think you've kind of thrown all your eggs in one basket. Now, we do have people that make it through there. They do it for a couple of years, and they're just like, it's not for me. I think that's a pretty small percentage. But then we're also seeing a percentage of people. We have a few that we've hired on that they started out at a city agency, worked their way up to a county sheriff's office, and then they got on with us, And so you kind of see some of that transitioning from city on up through to state. And some of that just depends on what they have for interest, right? There's guys out there that love the beat cop going call to call to call, like in the city of Council Bluffs, and that's awesome. That's great. If that's what you want to do, is continually get calls all shift long and respond to those, the city is the place for you. With the state patrol, we are primarily out on the open highways, whether it be state highways, county highways, interstate systems, patrolling, enforcing the motor vehicle laws, of our state is our main objective, obviously, and then covering accidents, right? We're considered kind of the accident gurus of the state, I guess you'd say. So we'll get called a lot of times from the cities and counties. Not so much the cities, they tend to deal with most of their stuff, but counties, sometimes we get a bad accident, maybe a fatality has happened in those out on a county road. They ask the state patrol to cover those because we tend to have guys that specialize in that. We have technical accident investigators that do lots and lots of training, have great equipment, to where we can assist those other agencies with crash investigations. And then motorist assist, right? People broke down out here along the side of the highway. I mean, those are kind of our three main objectives. But we do a lot of, I remember my time working day shift and night shifts and bouncing back and forth. Night shifts, you got to know your county officers really good, right? Because they were our backup and we were their backup on calls that maybe happened. So it wasn't uncommon if the county was going to a domestic and I was close to, hey, I'll head that way too, just because I knew we were the only two guys out in an entire county.
I would assume also that you need to be proactive in dealing with a lot of the different things that you see and making sure that you're not letting that build up. I mean, from a mental and psychological standpoint, again, this is a layman's standing on the outside looking in. But
Right.
I would assume that you need to be in front of that and not let it get to the point where you're overwhelmed by it.
For sure. And I think our agency, when I first started 27 years ago, we didn't talk a lot about the mental health side of things, or how maybe some of the calls that we were going on were affecting, our people. I think we've done an outstanding job. We have all kinds of support services. We're training our own people in how to help. If you just need somebody to talk to, get some of these things off your chest, because a lot of times you don't want to take those home with you, to your family life, and so it's a good thing to have lots of resources in place. And I think that's law enforcement in general. That's not just the State Patrol by any means. I think everybody is kind of on board with this. Take care of our own people. Make sure if they're having any issues, like you just said, let's get in front of it before it gets out of control and something bad were to happen.
Shifting gears a little bit, going back to you talking about doing traffic, and you mainly out in highways and interstate system. There's times that it kind of feels like everybody's acting like an idiot all at the same time. Is that just in my head, or from a law enforcement standpoint, do you see that too? That it seems like there's something going on and everybody just lost their minds today.
Yeah, we do. We definitely do. It used to be maybe we joked about. You always knew, okay, a winter storm was coming, and we knew there were going to be crashes. Period. End of story. And it seems like more nowadays, you can't pick those days out, right? Sometimes we'll have days where it's snowing and there really aren't that many crashes. And then you have a day like today where it's beautiful and 80 degrees and you end up with 3 crashes in a day. And you're like, how does that happen? It's sunny, visibility is great. And again, I think there's a lot of factors that play into that. Obviously, from my time starting 27 years ago till now, there's no doubt the traffic volume, I don't know that number, but there's no doubt there are more cars out there on the roadways, right? Interstate 80 is still only two lanes for the most part, other than when you get close to some metro agencies. And then I contribute a lot of it to people behind the wheel of that car. 27 years ago, we didn't have a cell phone as a distraction.
Right.
I personally have said for 5-6 years now, with the hands-free and the cell phones and the technology we have, is there any reason why the cell phone carriers could not all get on board and say, hey, Todd, if your car is going over 25 miles an hour, and we know your phone's going over 25 miles an hour, we are disabling everything but being able to place a phone call. So even if you had, if you wanted to send out a text message, you couldn't do it. The phone would physically not allow you to do that. We have that on our computers in our State Patrol cars, right? Everything is done on a computer anymore. That's the way we get all kinds of calls. Once I start traveling down the roadway, the only thing that I'm allowed to access is a mapping system that I can see other troopers and other law enforcement's location. Checking an email, sending a message, all of that is disabled. It wasn't that way. We first got those computers. You could check an email driving down the road. And then we realized that's not good. That's a safety issue.
Right.
And so now we've reeled it back into, so I say that with cell phones, right? If the cell phone carriers would all get on board with that, we wouldn't have to worry about the person behind the wheel or passing laws. It'd just be your phone doesn't work to social media, watch videos.
Right.
I still think it's important to be able to call 911. So allow it to place a phone call. That's it. I've said that to lots and lots and lots of people. Everybody says it's money behind it, right? The cell phone companies probably aren't getting on board with that because that's less data that is being burnt or being used.
Okay,
that's how they make their money. So I don't know,
well,
but I sit there and think to myself, why couldn't we do that?
I
If
see
we
your
were
point.
truly focused on saving lives, because we know these things are terrible, and
Oh, but there's a lot of those things. I could still, if I still smoked, I can go buy cigarettes.
Yes.
Knowing
I know.
that
I know.
there's a little label right on there that says
Yep.
you smoke this, it'll kill you. But I
Yes.
would still go and get them.
Right.
There's so
No, I
many
know.
things that are horrible for you that we just let go through. But at
Right.
the same time, there's certain features on my car that I can't use when it's in gear.
True.
Yep. Because it's got the little button, and if I'm checking to see, wait, do I have a tire going down? I can check and see
Yes.
if the pressure has
Yep.
gone down or not. And if I cycle back through, there's one it gets to. It says cannot use while the car's in in gear.
Right.
So the technology and that my car's a 2017. That's
Gotcha.
8 years ago.
Right.
It's been around for a while.
Right. And I've had other people too say, okay, we're talking about the hands-free and getting cell phones out of people's hands. What about the size of this radio where you're talking about all those functions?
Yep.
Isn't that a distraction in and of itself? I said, absolutely it is.
Well, there's some
it
cars
is.
that
At what
put it in the
point-
windshield.
Yeah, at what point are we going to have to reel in all that?
Right.
Because like you just said, you can do, yes, there's some things that are limited, but you can still do a lot that takes a lot of attention off the focus, which I tell people we need to get the driving back into driving, right? Not worry about, I tell young kids in driver's ed, I said, it doesn't matter what you have going on in your life. If you don't make it from point A to point B safely, none of that stuff in the middle mattered.
Right.
So when you're behind the wheel of a car, I call it, again, getting driving back into driving, because we need to quit worrying about these, and we need to quit worrying, dogs in laps. There's another fine distraction, right? There's people, ladies putting on makeup.
Oh, yeah.
Simply eating food, and right? There's drive-throughs at every single restaurant, and we all have done it. But is that a distraction? Sure it is, And so we talk about distraction. We blame a lot of it on the cell phone, but I think that there are just lots and lots and lots of distractions that are out there.
The one that gets me and has for decades is drinking and driving is illegal. They sell single beer cans at the gas station.
Right? Yep. Or the little shooters.
Yeah. Yeah.
I can't tell you how many times I live on a county pavement, and whether it be a beer can or one of those little those fireball shooters, you find those little bottles laying all over, as trash that's out there. And so, right, we know where those are being consumed at. But yeah, for sure, it's a crazy time. But yeah, to answer your question, we definitely amongst ourselves, we sit there and go, man, this is like the Wild West out here. Like
there's some things that just
it used to be
make sense, but
we talk about too. It used to be 20 years, some years ago when I first started, I would sit along the shoulder of Interstate 80 if two cars happened to get into a crash and nobody was hurt and everything was drivable. We'd move them onto the shoulder. I'd sit there and do a report, take pictures, do all of that, even if these vehicles were drivable, because I didn't think about getting hit by somebody else. Now it's becoming, again, I don't know if it's traffic volumes, probably certainly higher, but we've had a lot of our own officers hit, whether it be a nice day, or obviously a lot of times it happens in the snowy weather where somebody comes over the hill and there are the lights and they're going too fast and now they lose control and run into us. So we get off the road if we can. If vehicles are drivable, get off the road and get to exit, and that's where we do our paperwork, or a parking lot.
Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of those places that, what do they call them, accident investigation sites. I'm seeing those now.
Yeah, there's a few of those. Yeah. Yep. So again, it's just something that I think it's a danger of the job that 20-some years ago we probably didn't worry about near as much as we do now. But just the number of officers hit nationwide, on traffic stops or on the shoulder of the road, it's like, get your business done and move on, or move it to a safer spot if it comes to a crash.
Well, before we wrap things up here, I'd like to just get your views on, what this organization, the Masons here in Council Bluffs, doing. Just wanting to honor you guys a little bit. Just here's some lunch.
Yeah.
Kind of
No,
thing.
it's
and what does that kind of thing mean to you?
It's
guys?
outstanding. I tell people, kind of bring it full circle with the Masons doing what they're doing for us during Police Week. There are many different areas throughout the United States that I maybe wouldn't be, I wouldn't necessarily want to be an officer as much as the Midwest. So in Iowa, I feel like we have a overwhelming support from the general public. You're always going to have people that don't support you, but when other parts of the nation were maybe seeing the let's disband police movement, I think overall in the state of Iowa, we had a huge Back the Blue movement by the good majority of the people. So I always say the Midwest is still a great place to be a police officer and be in law enforcement. I think we have the overwhelming support of most of the citizens, regardless of kind of where you're at. I mean, you're never going to get all of them. That's with anything. And I think this is a prime example of an event organized by people that just want to say, hey, thanks for what you do, what we do. We go out on calls. Really, every traffic stop that a trooper does, you don't know what you're dealing with on the initial approach, to that traffic stop. After a little bit, Yeah, maybe you do. But for the most part, it's definitely a dangerous unknown job that, we appreciate, people saying thank you. And I feel like when that disband the police were happening in different parts of the nation, we were getting way more people that were saying thank you, appreciate what you do. I wouldn't want to do your job, but somebody has to. And so it's nice for us to feel that and hear that from community members. And a little appreciation grill out is great. I came to it, I think it was a couple years ago, so I know they've been doing it for 4 or 5 years, somewhere in there. And these happen all over. I know there's a Back the Blue event that usually happens down here in Council Bluffs that brings out huge community support. So overall, it's great.
Well, let me be the next in the list then to thank you for everything that it is that you're doing. You know, being completely honest, I wouldn't want your job. I wouldn't want to. I wouldn't want to go out and do what it is. But we have to have someone that does.
Right.
We don't function without what it is that you guys do. So grateful for you. This is Ryan DeVault. He is the information officer with the Iowa State Patrol for our district, 9-county area here in Southwest Iowa. Thank you, sir.
Perfect.
Grateful.
Thank
Wonderful
you.
you stopped by.
I appreciate that. Thanks a lot, Todd.
We'll feature folks from the Pottawatomie County Sheriff's Department tomorrow on Local Roots, so we hope that you come back and watch that episode as well. If you need precision metal fabrication done right, look no further than Foxco Fabrication in Council Bluffs. Custom welding, large-scale manufacturing, bringing your ideas to life with expert craftsmanship and cutting-edge technology. Whether it's industrial, commercial, or custom fabrication, they're going to get the job done on time and built to last. You can see everything they do, projects, and also all of the marketing material that you can get from them: signs, cups, cards, coasters, all types of stuff. Go to their website, foxcofab.com. If you have a leak or a clogged drain, or if you're planning a big remodel, Waldstein Plumbing in Council Bluffs has you covered. Fast, reliable service and expert craftsmanship, handling everything from small repairs to major installation. They're locally owned and trusted and take pride in doing the job right the first time. Residential or commercial, big or small, when plumbing problems strike, call Waldstein Plumbing or visit them online at waldsteinplumbing.com. Big thank you again to the Masons for hosting me yesterday and allowing me to use their space to record a lot of interviews with local law enforcement. And it was a great day yesterday to be able to get those interviews in. So thank you again so much for that. That's going to wrap up today's show. My name's Todd Studer. We'll see you back here again tomorrow morning.